Welcome to the Golf Spotlight. I'm Ralph Irvin here in our Golf Shop studio, and today we are merging this show with our Range podcast as we are joined by golf instructor and video content creator Mark Crossfield. Mark and I have been making videos talking about golf for well over a decade, although we approach it from very different perspectives. If this is your first time with us here in the Golf Spotlight, welcome. Hope you'll subscribe to our channel as we talk to the creators behind some of your favorite golf products. And follow the Range podcast on iHeart, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you find your favorite podcast. But now let's jump right into it as I asked Mark about when he started playing this great game of golf.
Yeah, I started as a 12-year-old, so relatively early. My dad tried to start me earlier, but football, as in, you know, the one where you use your foot, the UK football was what I wanted to do, basically. And then at 12 onwards, golf just got hooked, never stopped playing, really.
And where did you start playing on a full-size course or a smaller course?
No, so yeah, I started on what we would call a pitch and putt, so a par 3 course, which I could walk to from where I lived. And I literally would just go there and go round and round and round. My dad was a left-handed golfer, so I used to wear his right-handed glove upside down on my left hand, like just to look like a golfer and stuff. And then my dad played, so when he saw that I just wanted, you know, I was keen, we actually moved to where I live now in Devon, and we both joined a new golf course, and I just went every day and played as much as I could, really. Was hooked.
No, and it's funny, I didn't start playing till I was 24. And the first course was also a par 3 pitch and putt course. And yet in that first round, it just clicks. Yeah, this is something that I love.
Yeah, it was. I just got addicted. I got addicted to wanting to hit, like, you know, you'd hit a good shot and I wanted to hit more. Like, if I can hit one, I can hit them all good. Like, it was that, because you never win at golf. It was that desire to keep getting better that was just so attractive. Like, I loved that personal battle, and it wasn't a team game, it was all on me. You know, I loved the fact that it was up to me to work harder, to be better or not. That I loved that it was all on me.
The logical step as you grow up and become an adult is you became a professional, and you did that actually at a fairly early age.
Yeah, I was 19 or 20, I think I turned pro. I kind of played up till then, and then I was getting kind of frustrated with playing. It was a lot of traveling. It was tough. So I really loved understanding what made me play better or worse. So coaching was such a natural progression for me. It was something that I was really, really interested in. So as soon as I turned pro, everything then was about trying to be the best coach I could be, really, just trying to understand everything. I didn't ever want to be in a room and not really, of my peers, and not really understand what any of them was talking about. You know, I wanted to always know what was being taught, what were the ideas. So that became kind of the passion more than playing then.
When you do that, of course, you're going to probably come across competing philosophies and strategies that you've got to sort out yourself and create your own style.
Yeah, absolutely, you do. I guess I was quite lucky as well, because I was very much as well, I mean, not for all of my career, plenty of it was in what I would call old school coaching, but in those days it was more like you were doing your miles. Do you know what I mean? Like a pilot does. Coaching when you're learning is you need knowledge, and that's important, but it's also about, you need to meet every golfer. You've got to be doing a lot of different lessons. You've got to meet someone who's never played golf or even seen it and try and teach them, and then you've got to meet a guy or a girl who plays 3 times a week and wants to get on tour. Like, those days was more about you just put your head down and meet as many golfers as you can to learn what works for your different categories, if you like, of players. And then obviously what happened in my coaching career as well is measuring devices came along, launch monitors and what have you. So the even though the debates still are there, and they were there, they weren't really debates. They became less of debates because they could be quantified with measurement. So they were early debates amongst people who weren't maybe moving with the times and didn't want to measure. Like so the amount of debates I used to see and still do that, I think, can't believe people are still debating that. Like that's been proven as X, Y, or Z. That's the fact that they're still debating that. It's funny because it's not a debate anymore amongst people who are trying to keep up. So I was lucky as well because technology stepped in and was, allowed me to quantify what I was doing wrong and what I was doing right, which I was like uber excited by. That was just, I loved that we could measure. People were paying money and I can quantify with real data what's going to make them better or worse. That was brilliant.
Well, and I've talked with club builders from back in the day where, it went from being an art to something where they could make it into a science where they could really show, look, this is why this club is going to be better for you than what you're currently hitting. Was it all that you had hoped it would be, as that kind of teaching? Or, I mean, that seems like a lot. It seems like, as you're, say, getting your miles, it takes its toll. Yeah,
so it was quite interesting because that's what made me change direction with my career into content and other online activities. I achieved my goal. My goal was to be the busiest coach I could be. And I probably was one of the busiest coaches in the country because where I was in London. So the amount of chimney pots and people who wanted to learn in the area we were, I was doing 90 lessons a week. And I achieved the goal, what I wanted to be, the best coach I could be. And I realized it was making me a bit upset because I was so busy, I wasn't able to do any of any thoughts or ideas I was having. I just didn't have time to do any of them. I was just flat out being flat out. So I learned once I achieved my goal, and that was quite hard. Like you achieve your goal and you realize actually what I wanted to achieve was wrong. That shouldn't have been what I wanted to achieve. But sometimes you have to go down a dead end and realize that there's a wall there to come back out, don't you? And I realized maybe I should get busy in other ways. So that's when I started to do other things and digress. So that was basically in line with moving to Devon as well. So I moved away from a very busy place to a much quieter place where you actually have to work hard to get a good amount of lessons in Devon because there's a lot of pros and not as many people. So that gave me more time then to turn the camera on and start talking to it and play with editing ideas that I've always enjoyed doing and trying to tell stories, so trying to tell what I'm learning through lessons to a much wider audience. So it was a nice progression. I had to get that crazy busy to realize that I didn't want to be that crazy busy because there were sessions Friday afternoon or evening, 6 o'clock onwards. I've said this many times before. You wouldn't want to have that lesson. I was burnt, done, gone.
Right.
Like if you were that golfer coming to me struggling to hit the ball in the air there, I was like digging deep to care at that point. I was so burnt from a busy week. So I used to do those lessons and just think, I don't want to be this coach. I don't want to be that coach who's hands in pockets looking at the clock as you're doing lessons. I want every person to come to be as exciting as the first one of the day, which was nice. It was nice to move away from that and diversify a bit.
When you started doing video, did you have an idea of things that you wanted to share? Like, do you remember what some of the early ideas were that you were like, I really think that this is something that people should hear or see?
Yeah. The ideas have never really changed, to be honest. So my first ever video I did was how to grip the golf club, and I could do that video tomorrow and it would still get good interaction because there's people coming out of video who have like watched too many, and then there's plenty coming in the other end and they haven't watched the video I did 12 years ago, which is 4:3 in awful quality because that's where the cameras were then.
I know.
Yeah. So you can just keep, that video never ever goes away. I wanted to make content and put it in a place. Because obviously when I started 12 years ago, YouTube wasn't what it is now.
Right.
Certainly
In
the golf spectrum, it was a place to host videos. It was not monetized. There was never talk of it being monetized. It was still very the freemium model. I never started it to make money or wanted it to be about money. It was started because I wanted to I would get a lot of people coming for lessons who needed to be shown how to grip the club. and I wanted to have them to have something to reference when they went home. So I didn't have to tell them on the lesson 2. And if I did have to tell them on lesson 2, I would say, did you not watch the video and practice? Because you can do that at home. So it gave them accountability as well. And then, you know, in my diary, I can work out the ones who are willing to try, the ones who aren't, and then I can try and swap them out for more people who are going to go home and practice those kind of ideas. So I wanted to put content out there that I could, like, you know, things that were reoccurring in lots of lessons. These are patterns I'm seeing. I'm going to do videos about those patterns. And then, right, you've got a grip lesson today, Peter or John or whoever comes to a lesson. I want you to, here's a link to a video. If you can't remember what we talked about, it's all in there for you. So when you come back next week, it's fixed. I was also I had a website selling golf equipment.
Okay.
So it was also a good way of answering the many questions I had about, because I was club fitting and coaching at the time, because that's what club pros do in the UK. They kind of do a bit of everything. So I also wanted to answer the many, you know, how many times can someone ask me which is the higher launching iron between a bladed and a cavity back? Like, I don't want to have to keep answering that question over and over again. So I thought, if I do a video on that, there'll be people coming to me with those answers, because they'll see that video and they'll come and say, oh, you said this one's high launch. Can I test it? Yeah, cool. Let's get straight to the point. Let's not muck around with those MP7 irons and go up to your, you know, JPXs straight away. So it was always, for me, which it still is, a case of sharing what I know in a way to get people to then sort out more specialized help. My videos have never been about trying to fix anything. They're more about, here's some ideas, go and see your pro and work on them, because nothing substitutes a one-to-one lesson. Like, I was doing some testing with some amateurs on a new driver that's coming out today. All 3 of them were leaving such cheap, low-hanging fruit fixes on the table, with the old equipment they had to simple swing moves they made. You know, it was just so interesting to watch them test a new driver. It was like, well, this driver's minimal if this guy's hitting 6 down, what it can do. If I can just get him hitting level or 1 up, which I could do with 1 sentence, he's finding 15 yards, where testing the driver old to new, he's not finding any difference. He's just looking at his inconsistencies when he skies 1 minute, one out the top minutes, one out the bottom. So it was always a case of putting out what I know in a way that would inspire people to go and have lessons. And that was quite interesting at the time as well, because some pros, when I started years ago, got a little upset, because it's like, you're giving it away for free. Why are you giving it away for free? And then over the years, that changed massively. I used to get messages, and still do, from pros going, you know, thanks so much. I get people coming for lessons with me because they've watched your video and they're asking me questions. And I just think that's brilliant. That's why I want them. Don't think my video is the answer. My video is almost the start of a good conversation, and then you should go and have that with a professional that relates to you or not. So that's never changed from the start, really. Well, and it opens the door to people's just thinking about what they're doing, so that they know, oh, there are, you know, this isn't just grabbing a club and hitting it, that there is actually thought involved. You know, it's funny, because you had that you wanted to share. I started the Golf Spotlight in 2005. I was a 15-16 handicap. So I knew that what I thought about clubs didn't matter, but as somebody who had worked in sports media, that I could talk to the manufacturers in an interview sense and just say, okay, what are you trying to tell people? I'm not good enough to determine if it's any good, but at least I can say, this is what the message is, and then you as a consumer can take that to your professional and determine whether it's right or not. At that time, living in Florida, that was the time that lightweight poly shirts started to come out. And to me, it was more important actually than clubs, was to share the idea to guys in their 60s and 70s that are sweating their life away on the course. You know, you can put on a poly shirt and actually be comfortable out here. It's interesting you say that. I've said this before, and I was actually thinking it the other day. One of the biggest developments in the last 10, 15 years in golf is the clothes, because you know, if you just wear those cotton, I mean, I've been to Florida many times. I wouldn't even begin to wear a cotton shirt. I just wouldn't do it. Like, it's just not going to survive.
Right.
7 on in the evening and sit in situations. I'm like putting one on. When I've gone to Florida before, I have plastic shirts ready for every second of that day. Otherwise, you are just on a golf course. Yeah. Developments in golf clothes has been huge over the years, I think.
Again, I mean, it's just one of the many aspects that there is of coupling a player with their game, with their surroundings, with their, I mean, people talk about the grind on a wedge and how that matters and where you play. Well, so does everything about what you're wearing from your feet to your head.
Yeah, totally. I've been looking at some studies recently on the different shoes effect on different golfers, because I've just got a Swing Catalyst 3D force plate, and you can totally see some patterns in certain soles for certain people who use pressures in certain ways, how that like one shoe would not help and another one would. It's minimal gains, like your average, 15 handicap, 20 handicap golfer who's just playing for fun, don't care what shoes you wear. But if you actually want to, look at every part of your performance, looking down to the shoes, there's gains to be had at every part.
Was there an aha moment when you realized that your content was really reaching a wide audience and that it was something that was really worth putting a little extra attention towards?
There wasn't really. Well, there kind of was and there wasn't. So analytics on YouTube has changed massively as the platform has developed to where it is now, where it's very much now a game of using your analytics and trying to dial into audiences with certain kind of tricks. It's not so much about the content anymore, unfortunately. It's much more about what you can do with massaging the changing algorithm constantly, really, which is a shame. So in earlier times on YouTube, analytics were scarce and people didn't even really look at them because they didn't understand what they were. It was a gradual growth, and I've never had anything to compare it to. I've got more to compare it to now because there are channels far bigger than mine. So you've got more of a comparison now. Back in those, there was no comparison because it was basically, there's probably 3 or 4 years where it was just me who was kind of committing to making content on YouTube as a platform. And then when others came, because I started earlier, they were so far behind, there was no comparison really. They were very different sizes. And lots of those people have gone on to become lots bigger, which is, good for them and great. But so for me, there was a moment where I kept feeding the beast. So I kept pushing the beast more and it kept growling back. So then I would give it some more and give it some more, because I was a full-time coach and a medium full-time content creator. So basically I ran 2 full-time jobs, like most people who start a business. You work like crazy at the start to try and make it work, because you got to pay the bills, but you got this new idea that's not paying, and so you're going to try and push it. And you could see the scale slowly kind of evening up. So YouTube started to pay, and then it started to pay similar to what I was coaching. So it was like, okay, well, I can't keep working 2 full-time jobs. One's going to have to go back. So I pushed YouTube a bit harder, and that money went up. But doing that, the coaching money would go down because I didn't have the time. So I remember there was a time when I spoke to a couple of colleagues who was like, I could do this full-time. I could do this as a job. But it was never an intention. It was just so gradual because, I was basically in the golf sector on YouTube. I was kind of before the growth to watching it grow to now what it is, this massive thing where so many genres of audience just do use YouTube for its content and search engine now. That was never where it was where I started. It's very interesting to watch it change.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about because I think I've been on 12 years as well. And in the early years, it didn't matter what I put up, it got views. Now there are certain areas where I get views, and there's certain areas where so many different creators are doing, and when the new drivers come out, everyone's doing a feature on those new drivers. So, of course, I'm just one of 1,000 options. When they're talking about new, we talk about Cleveland Srixon, when they're talking about Smart Sole wedges, how many people are talking about the Smart Sole? I am.
Yeah.
And it shows that I get people that tune in to see that, because I'm talking
Mm-mm-mm.
about the clubs that they're actually hitting, that actually can help them become a better player. So it is finding those little niches where you're providing something that's different. One area where you're very different is you will essentially take a viewer inside your foursome, your buddies, as you go out and play. And so you kind of have a fifth ride along so that they can share that experience, because sometimes it's just not possible to have that in a day, and it can just brighten up the day, and people love that.
Yeah, and it's fun. So what I mean, the just recently started doing the series where we play with a watcher, a subscriber, and it's fun to get them on, because the social media world is full of, like, it's very easy to tweet that you hit the ball 160 with a 7-iron.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get many students who come through at a 167 iron, but they all seem to be hitting it that far on Twitter. So it's fun to get some real students on and watch them, do the mistakes that the average Joe makes. Watch the first guy we had on, he started finding it, it fell off. He just really struggled. And I just said to Matt afterwards, how many golfers have that, like, every 3 weeks of the month that they play just where it's awful, and then all of a sudden it all clicks.
Right.
It's so real, and then we can share that with the audience. You're gonna have bad rounds. It's how you cope with them. It's the skills that you have to try and cope with them. What you'll find, if me and Matt have a bad round, we've got a few more skills to hook it around the tree and all those kind of things. So maybe it's a good idea to work on some of your recovery shots as well as trying to hit your 7-iron better, because you're going to have the same amount of fairway 7-irons as you are fairway length recovery shots. So if you never practice recovery shots, I'm going to beat you, because I can play the recovery shot. So it's not that I'm hitting more fairways. I can miss more fairways, but I've got a shot to recover. Have you? So it allows the audience, I think, to see some real questions being asked, which then I can work on trying to give some answers for people, really.
Well, it's funny that you talk about that, because I was going to talk about the fact of, you don't just work on people's physical swings. You work on their mental game and their approach to, I like to call what you were describing the shame spiral, where you just keep falling down the hole and you're just trying to just stop the slide. And sometimes it's just being able to, when you've blocked that shot off into the trees, if you know how to hit that running pitch shot out, that can brighten your whole day back up, and you're back into a good place.
Oh, 100%. I mean, the guy we had on, he was going to chip out sideways on an occasion, and we and Matt would have been hitting it 150 yards forward from that position. He's coming out 20 yards forwards. I would have gone 100 to 150 yards forwards, because I could keep it low and punch it. I'm going to have a much better third shot from 80 yards out than he is from wherever far he has out, 150, 160 yards out. You forget the bad shots if you keep making score. People are very quick to forget how bad their shots are if they're scoring on each hole. They seem to remember the bad shots when they hit a bad one, chip out, hit another bad one, chip out, and then pick up. It's the fact that you chipped out twice, not that you're going to hit bad shots. You're handicapped golfers. When I look at the stats that people send me, the amount of people missing 60% plus fairways, they're hitting 30 or 40% max fairways, like, they're only hitting it 220 and they're missing 60% of the fairways. Why are they not practicing it better out the rough? I see them at the range practicing every position under the sun, because that's what they see the tour pros practice. Well, the tour pros are practicing that because they can play out the rough already. They don't have to practice that. And they can hit a low stinging draw, or a low cutting fade, or a high one over shot. They don't need to practice them. They did all that when they were kids. They've got that skill. So they're on the range trying to perfect perfection. You shouldn't be practicing like that. You should be practicing the shots you play. If you collect stats, I mean, it's amazing to see when I look at amateur stats, they're not hitting many fairways.
Right.
So, yeah, I think there's lots of very cheap gains for golfers if the content for them is just... Unfortunately, the hardest thing is that the content people search for isn't actually always the best content for them.
No, that's true. And it's funny because you were just talking about, the simple gains that are out there. I think the simplest game starts before the first tee, choosing what tee to play. If you play
Oh
the
yeah,
tee that makes you
yeah.
happy, I mean, I'm playing it now as well as I've ever played in my
Mm.
life, and yet I went and played with someone, and they were saying, "Yeah, play it. We're gonna play back here," and I'm like,
Yeah,
"All right,
I think the RNA did a study.
I'll do it for the
Yeah.
social aspect," but it doesn't make it more fun.
No, I think the RNA or USG, I think it was the RNA did a study on the T's people choose, and
Mm-hmm.
they were all getting. There was most were getting it wrong. Basically, you could. There's some really good. I haven't got it to hand, but there's some good kind of guidelines on how far you hit your drive. You should play the course at like so. If you hit your drive 220 off the tee,
Mm-hmm.
you should be playing the 6,000 yard tees. If you're
Right.
hitting it 250, you could have a go at the 6.3, and if you hit it
Mm-hmm.
300 yards, get on the 7,000 yard tees. Don't quote me on those numbers. I'm just, it's
No,
that's the idea. I just think pro shops should be doing that more.
right.
Like, how far do you do it? Even on the ranges, like what's your distance? Great, right? You're going to be off this tee, right? You're going to be off this tee. Um, Obviously, it's a bit more complicated when you get split. Um, you know, abilities in groups. But I play
Mm-hmm.
with my daughter. She doesn't play off the same tees as me, and we have
Right.
plenty of fun. It's doable. I think the male ego often is the little bit of the brick wall that people hit when you talk tee distances. The three people I was testing with today, all three of them, when asked them how far they hit it, they all gave me their top end. They didn't give me their average. They gave me
Right.
their top. So they were all telling me how far they can hit it. Well, I can hit it 285 in the air if I absolutely go for it, but I'm going to struggle to hit the planet. So that's not, but I don't hit it 280 in the air. And I just think that's a reoccurring pattern that's a hard one to break down.
Well, and it's inherent in golf. I mean, that's what the handicap is. It's not about what you
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
shoot; it's what you're capable of shooting. And in terms of the distance, the theory I had heard was you take your 5 iron distance, multiply it by 36, and that's what you should be playing in terms of an overall course distance.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think it's good. Yeah, it's
you know,
good.
and again, that adds up. If you're hitting it, 170 with a
Yeah,
5 iron,
yeah.
that ends
Makes
up being about
sense.
a 6,000 yard course. So it's a perfect fit in.
Yeah.
Of course, recently we saw Bryson DeChambeau dominate the U.S. Open, uh, combining power, strategy, but maybe the most important thing was he had a will that he's going to play his game, earning his first major. Obviously, the old golf world is up in arms because they just don't see why you should be changing the approach to the sport. But there is a lot more going on there than just somebody that was rearing back and hitting it as far as he could. He knew where he could miss and then how to play from those spots.
But there's lots of things with Bryson that are so brilliant that get missed in the media hype around this kind of bubble of hate's a strong word, but the media like to put this bubble of controversy around him that your casual golf fan will happily dial into that kind of negative connotations, if you like. I don't know a golf coach who's worth their soul who isn't so excited about what Bryson's doing because it just shows what us as coaches can do for someone who's got the
Mm-hmm.
drive to be better. Where before coaching, certainly on tour ranges, has been so much about like I see it for you, hitting certain positions on the range, and then that player goes out, and that coach is hoping that they have a good round and that they hit these field positions that kind of getting their ball flight in place. Where Bryson was 12th in strokes gained in 2018 off the tee. 12th. He
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a bad driver. He was a
No.
world class driver in 2018. He was 12th in strokes gained. So you're taking someone who's really, really good and could win a major. He'd won the US Ama. He had the game to win a major, but he went, no, I'm going to flip this on its head and go for it because I don't want to be 12th. I want to be number one strokes gained for driver. And he made himself one of the best drivers of the ball in the world. That can only be saluted, and we can only be impressed with that. And I scratch my head how people seem to want to be negative towards him and that. met the guy years ago. He's one of the nicest guys I've ever filmed with. And it's so funny as well because it's not a new game. Tiger did it.
Right.
Nicholas did it. Nicholas hit it further than anybody generally on tour. That's why he was able to dominate. Look at pictures of Nicholas. I mean, I've been to his home course. I filmed there last year. There's pictures of him 17, 18 on the wall. His legs are bigger than my body. Like, the guy was a natural, massive athlete. Bryson's made himself bigger. Nicholas was a huge guy, and he did bomb the ball miles. So it's nothing new that what Bryson is doing. I honestly think golf just got itself a little bit lost. I think it got itself a little bit stuck in the position swing world and not really understanding what Nicholas and then what Tiger did. It's stats and the collection of stats on the PGA Tour that's allowed the smart coaches to get smarter yet again with data and take that information and help people like Bryson achieve what the stats just blatantly show they need to achieve, which is to send that ball further with similar accuracies and similar strategies of success with short game. And like, his scrambling and putting numbers are great. People don't give him the credit for those.
No.
He's just done what all sports people would want to do, which is improve themselves within the rules to the best that they can be. And I'm hoping that he believes he can be the best in the world, which I know he would. And he's trying to be it. Like, how can we not salute that? It just baffles me, personally.
And it really boils down to something that you deal with amateurs, with every amateur golfer should really understand, is that he created a game that fit him, that fit who he is, how he swings, everything else. And that's what everyone should be doing, starting with their clubs. Get fit, even if it's just a lie adjustment. It's going to improve you, let alone if you go and get a complete set of clubs built to your specs. The point is that, as I've tried to show for years doing my equipment talks, there's no best club out there.
No.
There's no worst club out there.
No, there isn't.
There's just the best club for you. And
three people came to test the brand new driver today that's not released yet.
Yes.
All three of them hit the brand new driver further. It wasn't that the brand new driver goes further. I just found their launch window that their other three drivers weren't hitting.
Mm-hmm.
So the ball speeds were actually the same on all three drivers they hit. They're 1 to 2 of the ones I've got. The ball speeds did not change. There was no super fast, springy, amazing faces. There was no aerodynamic super improvements. The ball speeds were the same. They were in 1 mile an hour of each other. But all three of the people came. I was able to get the newer driver to go further because I could set the club around what they brought to a launch window that maxed out what they put in. And I just thought, what are you guys doing? Like, custom fitting is available. It's been available for years. How are you not hitting that launch window now? You know, like, and that's Bryson sums it. He's hitting whatever launch window he wants. And he's realised it doesn't go far enough. So he's going to change his physical being and then hit a different launch window because he's now faster and max out. It's like, there's so many cheap gains for golfers out there by getting a good fit. Like, so many. Like, these were 3 random people today. All 3 of them, I got them hitting it. I think the shortest was 7 yards extra carry.
Mm-hmm.
It was pure, they weren't any faster, ball speed, no difference. I just got their launch down and the spin changed as the launch came down because they were all hitting it too high. And it went further. I just thought, wow, that wasn't art. Why have you been playing with a driver that just pops it in the air like that?
Yeah, no, it's just that extra step of going from just buying something to actually having it tuned a little bit. It's been a record-breaking summer of golf here in the United States. I mean, sales numbers in July and August just blowing out previous year's records. Looking ahead, where do you see the physical and maybe the virtual, the online world of golf colliding? I mean, where do you see things going in the future?
Okay, so, I mean, I think obviously content is still going to be very much king. It's still what people really are wanting to dial into. I do think we need to see a good shift in TV needs a proper shift forwards, in my opinion, for golf. Just watching the US Open on Prime, Amazon Prime in the UK. So the US Open tennis, it was on Amazon Prime in the UK. I could pick any court, I could watch any match, different commentators. It was how I consume, and then obviously it's all saved for afterwards, so I can come in at 11 at night, which is obviously a different time in New York, and just watch whatever games that have been pre-recorded and put up. And I just thought, this is how I want to consume my media, sports or otherwise. And then my kids will watch Amazon Prime. So if they wanted to, there is tennis there now in front of them. They could choose to watch it. They cannot choose to watch golf in the UK because it's locked behind a paywall that we're not paying for because it's got no other content on it. I honestly think that the golf world would love to see a bit of a shift in commentary, in how it does itself relative to terrestrial telly, what we call, compared to online activities. One thing, the Masters is coming in November. The Masters app, out of all the apps, is probably the best app where you can almost follow the golf without having to watch it on the app. It's amazing shot by shot collection. It's instant. It maps out the course. It's just really, really good.
No, and as say, in that vein, you don't even need much of a commentary so much as maybe somebody that's with a group that's following, just to say, you don't realize this, but this is really deep rough, or we're looking at a 30-foot incline or something along those lines. But otherwise, just let the play speak for itself. I talked to, when we had the earlier, when things were shut down and there was the exhibition matches at Seminole and in Jupiter, where there are great boom mics that'll capture all the sound that miking up players do. If people would just be quiet and listen.
Yeah. And the other thing as well is that if you're able to jump around on holes, there'd be no commentary that would jump with you anyway. I think the commentary idea works for the core golf audience. So, you've got your core golfers who play golf and watch golf, and they want to know what Faldo's got to say or whatever's want to say. And that's cool. Like that's there for them. But your bigger audience who don't want to consume golf for 2 hours or 4 hours in an evening, they just want to flick around, go out. I mean, I didn't watch one shot of the US Open on a TV. I'm using the app, I'm using Twitter, I'm using Instagram, and I'm following it shot for shot. I don't need, for me personally, who struggles with half the stuff the commentators say, because generally it's full of cliche and it's misleading. I don't need them speaking for me. I just want to know what they're shooting on each hole. I can click and see how far they've hit it and where they've hit it on the map, on the app. And that's good enough for me to follow. I do think the way golf is consumed definitely is due a good old shake-up. I don't think it'll happen because TV generally is a little stuck in its ways, and it's got so much issues with compliance and stuff like that because there's sponsors paying big amounts of money and they can't wear and say certain things. It's always about, it's the ultimate. TV is always like the ultimate. I always think it's like live sport TV. It's the ultimate say nothing, because if you say something or show an opinion, it's going to upset some sponsor or someone, and they don't want to do that. So what you get is candy floss. Right. You don't get anything. Where there are some great voices on Twitter watching, and you just listen and join in with them is much more entertaining way, I think, of consuming the golf at the moment.
The funny thing is when you talk about the commentary, I still get lost in the fact that if somebody pulls out something that's not a driver and not an iron, it must be a metal wood. And they still don't grasp the fact that there are hybrids out there that a lot of players are using, and they don't even know how to refer to a hybrid. They're like, that's some sort of rescue club I think he's pulling out there. And it's like, my gosh, these have been out for well over 10 years. They're pretty accepted tools now.
There's no desire in the media to stay ahead of the game, unfortunately, as in there is in production. Their production is obviously second to none. TV put the most money in. The production is impressive, like the camera work, from using the phantom cameras to the overheads to the graphics. No one's going to beat that unless you invest a lot of money. The information that they are giving out, basically, I've worked around those kind of medias, and the producers aren't golfers, so they don't understand if what the commentator is saying is right and wrong. The commentator is the authority and what should be said, so the producer will listen to the commentator. But no one is rating the commentator because they have ex-golfers on, and at the moment there's not one ex-golfer sat in those studios who plays or understands any of what Bryson has done. This US Open has been a classic example of a number of commentators saying that won't work, when there are plenty of people that I talk to daily, good coaches around the world, who are just going, he's going to win a major this year, he's going to win a major this year, he's going to win a major, because they're getting it, they get it. It's not as if that information isn't out there. When my experience of the people on telly is that they're on telly, so they've made it, and then they almost stop trying. They think that it's like telly is the pedestal that puts them in a position of power, where unfortunately telly is a high percentage of very poor info. There's some great ones. I mean, I don't watch the American commentary much, obviously, but people like Frank Nobilo is really trying to push forward and stay current. But I just feel like he's in the minority of voices. It's a shame. You've got a guy there who's really trying to make sure he's not looking like a buffoon on TV. But there are plenty of others who are just happy to say what they used to say when they played in the 80s and 90s, really. And it's, I don't know. I struggle with that.
No, I do too. And I don't have nearly the golf knowledge you do, so I can only imagine. I always like to wrap up conversations here on the range by taking you into the Wayback Machine. And is there a club or maybe a piece of golf technology that jumps out at you that gives you extra warm feelings, or you think really made a difference in your game or the game in general?
Okay, well, for me, it would be my launch monitor was the big, massive game changer for me in my profession and then also in content. I was a very early uptaker of the launch monitor. I had my launch monitors only in the UK a long time before they were very mass, like everyone was having them. So that would be my real take home. At the moment, it's my Swing Catalyst 3D force plate, which there's only 2 or 3 of them in this country, and it's given me some amazing insights into how people are using the ground and creating power or not. It gives me such a powerful tools to help people hit the ball further with not much effort, to be fair. It's interesting. But at golf clubs, I did it recently. I did a video, I don't know how long, a couple of months ago back, called My Driver History, where I got every one of my drivers that I had ever gamed through my life to see where the big jump was in distance. And there was definitely a jump in the Great Big Bertha from the Warbird, one that I remember when I was playing, like, wow, hit a shot thinking, no, I have not seen a ball fly like that before, because it was noticeably longer in the length of the shaft, and then it gave you the bigger head, so you did feel like you could swing it faster and all the rest of it. So I Callaway, the old Callaway Great Big Bertha era is like, that was the kind of granddaddy or grandma of where clubs accelerated to, because before that it was literally the club market was just static. It was just literally, apart from Ping, who were doing stuff with irons but were obviously much more chilled with their woods. I think that was one of those moments for me as a golfer that stood out, like, wow. The ball change would have been a big one, but I wasn't playing golf when the ball changed. It's quite interesting. I competed using a Balata, and then I coached for 4 or 5 years, not really playing, like once a year at the most in that time. And obviously the ball changed. And then when I came back, it was like, whoa, yeah, that's different. So I wasn't there when it actually just jumped overnight. Like I talked to some tour pros who changed the ball, and overnight it was 25 yards further. It was like that changed. So yeah, for me though, personally, it's my coaching tech that just allows me to just look inside the student, deeper in a more measured way that excites me.
It's been a pleasure talking with you. Your success online is very well documented, but to me, the biggest win is got to be knowing that you've made golf more enjoyable for people really around the world. So thank you so much for joining me.
It's very kind. Thank you for having me. Thanks for, it's been fun. Enjoyed it.
I want to thank Mark Crossfield for joining us here on the Golf Spotlight. Of course, we ask that you subscribe to us here on the Golf Spotlight right here on YouTube. The button's right there as we talk to the creators behind some of your favorite golf clubs. You can follow us on Twitter at Golf Spotlight. On Instagram, it's at The Golf Spotlight. And follow the Range Podcast. It's on Spotify, iTunes, iHeart, wherever you find your favorite podcasts, you will find the Range. In fact, we've got links for everything right down below. Most of all, we want to thank you for joining us here on the Golf Spotlight as we continue to give you the information that you need for your next golf purchase.